The Lantern Fox and the Moonlight Path. Upon a time, in the hush of an ancient forest, tucked between misty hills and silver lakes, a soft glow shimmered beneath the canopy of twilight trees. It was not the glow of fireflies, nor the faint glint of dew catching the moonlight. This glow was steady and warm, like the heartbeat of the woods itself. And if you followed it carefully, quietly, you might find the source of the light. A little fox with fur the color of twilight and eyes like golden lanterns stepped lightly between ferns and moss. Her name was Leora, and she carried, nestled in the curve of her curled tail, a glowing lantern, not made of glass or flame, but of memory and light. The lantern pulsed softly with every step she took, illuminating the path, not only through the forest, but through time. 2. Leora was the last of the Lantern Foxes, a small family of woodland creatures entrusted with a very old magic. Every night, as the stars blinked awake and the forest exhaled into darkness, it was her duty to light the Moonlight Path, an invisible trail that only children with dreaming hearts could follow. The path, it was said, led to places you couldn't find on a map, to the dreams of the lonely, to the courage of the shy, and to the laughter that echoes in the trees long after the giggling children have gone home. The Lantern Fox's task was gentle and sacred: guide dreamers safely and bring them back before the last star faded. But lately, something had changed. Leora had noticed it 3 nights ago. The lantern's glow, once bright and full of warm, swirling patterns, now flickered at the edges. It still lit the path, but not with the certainty it once had. The light no longer hummed with memory. Instead, it whispered something she couldn't quite understand. And the path, oh, the path, it no longer unfurled with ease. Some nights, it curled in on itself like a frightened fern. Some nights, it ended abruptly in pools of shadow. Refusing to go farther. Something in the forest was shifting. Tonight, as the moon climbed above the treetops, Leora stood at the clearing where the path usually began. She curled her tail gently around the lantern and blinked up at the stars. A breeze stirred her fur. The trees were unusually quiet. Suddenly, a small sound rustled from the bushes behind her. Leora tensed, but it wasn't the low growl of a predator or the crunch of heavy feet. It was humming, a child's humming, off-key, but sweet. From the ferns stepped a boy, not more than 7, in a blue shirt smudged with grass stains and sleep still clinging to the corners of his eyes. His name was Emery, though Leora didn't know it yet. And Emery? Emery had always believed in the stories his grandmother told. Stories of foxes that glowed like fireflies. Stories of puffs that led you through dreams. He believed so hard, in fact, that one night, while drifting to sleep by an open window, he whispered, "If there really is a path for dreamers, I hope it finds me." And it had, the moment his toes touched the mossy floor of the dream forest. The Moonlight Path shimmered faintly to life, enough for him to follow. If only just... Leora watched him for a long breath. No child had found the path without being called in over a year. Yet here he was, humming. She stepped forward. "Hello," Emery said, as if meeting a glowing fox in the woods was the most natural thing in the world. Leora dipped her head politely. She could not speak in words as humans did, but her lantern pulsed a little brighter, a flicker of understanding. "Are you lost?" Emery asked gently. "I think I might be." Leora turned and let the lantern swing gently with her tail. A soft beam of light arched in the air like a ribbon, pointing into the trees. The path called both of them now. So they walked, the fox and the boy, through trees that whispered and roots that hummed, deeper into the forest than most dreamers ever reached on their first night. As they walked, Emery noticed the silence. Not the empty kind, but the listening kind, like the forest was holding its breath, waiting. The trees leaned in, their leaves trembling as if gossiping in secret rustles. He reached out once, fingers brushing a vine that recoiled gently, like a sleepy cat disturbed. Every sound felt louder in this enchanted quiet. The soft squelch of moss, the swish of Leora's tail, the occasional chirp from a distant owl who hadn't yet learned to sleep through magic. Emery had questions, hundreds of them, but something about the way the lantern glowed made him hold them close, like treasures not yet ready to be spent. He didn't need to ask where they were going. He already knew they were going where his dreams had always pointed, even if he'd never had a map. And Leora knew that, for the first time in many moons, a child was walking the path, not because he was called, but because he believed. They came to the river of forgotten things, a slow, silver stream winding like a scythe through the forest. Its surface shimmered with reflections that didn't match reality. There, in the water, Emery saw a balloon he'd once let go, a broken toy boat from a park trip long ago. Even the ribbon his mother had tied in his hair when he was 3. He gasped, "It remembers." Leora gave a small nod. The river kept what people forgot, not to punish, not to trap, but to hold gently, to remind the dreamers that nothing truly loved is ever really gone. Emery crouched near the bank. "Do you think I'll see my granddad's garden here?" he whispered. The lantern flickered, not dimly, but warmly. The kind of flicker that means yes. As they crossed the narrow bridge of woven twigs and moonbeams, Emery's gaze lifted to the sky. He saw constellations he didn't recognize. One looked like a squirrel playing a trumpet, another like a cat dancing on a fence. The stars here were stories themselves. But even with all this wonder, Leora felt it. The tug. The slow, uncomfortable tightening in the magic. The path behind them had faded quicker than usual. Normally, the light lingered, offering a trail back. But this time, it had vanished as soon as they stepped past the bridge. She turned her head to glance behind, and her tail, usually glowing bright gold, now glimmered with a silvery flicker. It was not a healthy light. It was the light of something old, thinning, the kind of glow that meant something had been borrowed and forgotten to be returned. She quickened her pace. Emery matched her easily. "What's that smell?" he asked. No scrunching. They had entered a patch of forest that Leora had never seen decay this early in the night. The leaves, instead of glowing softly with moon magic, drooped like paper left in the rain. The air had turned still, like the breath had been pulled out of the space. A voice, thin, dry, like wind rattling old parchment, curled out from a hollow stump. "Little fox with a borrowed flame." Leora froze. "You walked the path with something missing." Emery looked around. "Who said that?" Leora stepped between him and the stump. Her fur bristled. Out from the darkness slithered a figure made of bark and thread. Not entirely tree, not entirely creature, more like the memory of something that used to be forest but had chosen to become something else. It was the Hollow Warden. Long ago, it had been the guardian of the in-between spaces, where dreams and waking moments met. But over centuries, it had hardened, become jealous of light, of laughter, of foxes who still carried lanterns when its own spark had died. "You took too long to come back," the warden hissed. "Now the shadows have grown hungry." Leora did not answer. She stood firm, even as her lantern dimmed slightly. Emery, though frightened, stepped up beside her. "You can't scare us," he said bravely. "We're not afraid of shadows." The Hollow Warden tilted its head. "You should be." And with that, the clearing grew dark. Not night dark, but forgetting dark. The kind where you lose your name and what you came for. The kind of dark that swallowed stories whole. Leora closed her eyes, tail tightening around the lantern. It was time. She hadn't done this in years. She inhaled deeply, drawing in the magic that lived in roots and stars, in lullabies and bedtime kisses. The kind of magic that lit nightlights and calmed stormy dreams. And then she let it out. In a burst, the lantern flared, not with fire, but with memory. And the memory was Emery's, of his mother's voice singing by the window, of his first drawing of a fox, of the soft warmth of his bed. Of safety. The warden recoiled. You carry real light, it whispered, as if shocked. Dreamer's light? It melted into the roots and vanished. Emery blinked. Was that a nightmare? Leora nodded once, and the light settled again. The path shimmered forward once more, but this time, thinner. They didn't have long. The forest's balance had shifted, and something darker was trying to wake up. The lantern, for now, still held enough. They continued on, not with fear, but with purpose. They would need to find the Well of Echoes. Leora knew it held the answer to why her lantern was fading, and why the forest was forgetting. But time was no longer on their side. For beyond the whispering reeds and drowsy meadows, where the boy alien had first followed the fox with the lantern tail, the world shifted. It deepened. It softened. The trees no longer stood in straight lines, but in gentle spirals, like lullabies etched into the earth. The wind carried the scent of jasmine and something older, like the warmth of a blanket that had cradled generations. Alien followed the lantern fox deeper into this realm of moon-dipped shadows and slow-moving magic. His feet no longer crunched leaves. Instead, he stepped upon moss that hummed with memory and glowed faintly beneath his toes, as though the path itself remembered the footsteps of dreamers past. Where are we now? Alien whispered, afraid that a louder voice might wake the entire forest. The between, answered the fox without looking back. This is where the world listens. To what? The fox tilted its lantern tail, casting golden light upon a grove of trees, shaped like question marks. To you. They came upon a shallow river, its waters clearer than glass, flowing not with speed, but with intent. Beneath the surface, glowing stones pulsed gently, like fireflies resting in the current. This river, said the fox, sitting down at the edge, is called Whisper Flow. It remembers every story ever told near its banks. It remembers sadness, laughter, promises, and secrets. Alien knelt beside it, watching the water ripple. His reflection shimmered, but then shifted, and for a moment, he saw a younger version of himself, sitting alone beneath a staircase, clutching a pillow and blinking back tears. He gasped, "How does it know that?" The fox dipped its paw into the river. The ripples faded. Because you carry it still. This place doesn't forget, even when you try to. Alien's hands trembled slightly. Is that bad? No, said the fox gently. It just means you have a story, and every story wants to be understood. They followed the river for a while. The banks were lined with flowers that turned their petals to face Alien as he passed. Some of them whispered his name in voices that sounded like lullabies. One flower, a soft lilac bloom, hummed the tune his mother once sang while folding laundry on rainy afternoons. Lia and stopped walking. Did you hear that? He asked. I did, said the fox. I thought I forgot that song. The fox flicked its tail. You didn't. You just stored it somewhere safe. Alien reached out to touch the flower, but it folded gently away, as if shy. He smiled. It's like this place is made of memories. The fox nodded. Not just yours. Everyone's, every child who ever dreamt of something bigger. Every heart that ever felt too small. They leave echoes here. They reached a glade where the river widened into a still pool. And at the center rose a stone, shaped like a book left open mid-story. Upon it sat a creature unlike any Alien had seen, part owl, part deer, with antlers made of woven ivy and eyes that glowed like the moon through mist. It blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream, then spoke in a voice as round as nighttime. Alien of the waking world, it said. Alien froze. How do you know my name? I remember it, the creature said. You whispered it into the roots of a weeping tree when you were 4 years old and afraid of thunder. Alien looked at the fox. It's true, the fox said. This is the archivist? The archivist stepped down from the stone and approached Alien, leaving no footprints. You seek your path, it said. But paths are not found. They are remembered. It touched its antler to Alien's forehead. At once, Elian saw flashes, a field where he once chased dragonflies with his grandfather. A night, he stood on tiptoe to look at stars and wondered if someone was looking back. A time, he let go of a balloon at a fair and whispered a wish to it, even though he knew balloons didn't answer. Then, the images faded. "You are not lost," said the archivist. "You are returning." Elian swallowed a lump in his throat. "But I don't know where I'm going." The creature smiled gently. "That is the start of every good story." Before they left, the archivist gifted Elian a small stone from the riverbed. It looked like ordinary river quartz. But when Elian held it close, he heard laughter his own, from years ago. "A reminder," said the archivist, "that you were joyful once, and will be again." The fox nodded solemnly. "We must keep moving." "Why?" Elian asked. "Because the moonlight is thinning, and there is still someone you must meet." "Who?" The fox's lantern brightened. "The keeper of forgotten names." Elian shivered, not from cold, but from the feeling that this story was deeper than he ever imagined. And somewhere inside him, a door began to open. The moonlight shimmered softly through the tall silverleaf trees, as if whispering secrets only night could hear. Lumi, the lantern fox, padded gently along the mossy path, her golden lantern swinging from her tail, casting a comforting glow that danced like fireflies across the branches. A quiet stillness settled over the forest, yet it was the kind of stillness that hummed with hidden stories, as though the trees themselves remembered everything. Ahead of her walked Orion, the boy with listening ears. His eyes, wide and bright, shimmered with curiosity. He wasn't just walking beside Lumi. He was learning to walk with the forest. "Do you hear that?" Lumi asked, stopping at the edge of a clearing. Orion tilted his head, listening. The wind was gentle, but it carried with it a soft rustling, a murmur. Perhaps not the ordinary rustle of leaves in a breeze, but the sound of words caught between time and bark. "It's speaking," he whispered. "Yes," said Lumi. "Welcome to the Forest of Echoes." The clearing was unlike anything Orion had seen. Ancient trees, wider than cottages, stood in solemn circles. Their trunks were twisted and covered in tiny carving symbols, names, tiny illustrations of foxes, stars, birds, and boats. Some glowed faintly under Lumi's lantern light. "These are memory trees," Lumi explained. "Every soul who ever wandered this path has left a whisper behind. The forest keeps them safe." Orion stepped forward and placed a hand on the nearest tree. The bark felt warm. A voice, faint but kind, echoed in his mind. "I once lost my way, but the light found me." He gasped and turned to Lumi. "I heard her." Lumi nodded gently. "Only those who truly listen can hear the voices. They do not speak to fill silence, they speak to be remembered." They continued deeper into the forest of echoes, passing tree after tree. Each one whispered something new, fragments of journeys long finished, dreams long forgotten, promises left behind. A tree shaped like a swan murmured, "I flew without wings, once, on a hope too big for my heart." A tree whose roots formed a cradle hummed. The child dreamed of stars and made friends with the dark. Orion began to feel the weight of it all, not sadness exactly, but a profound stillness. These voices weren't lonely. They were content, held by the forest, remembered. But then came a different kind of echo. A jagged tree, its bark cracked and darkened, stood alone. As Lumi approached it, the lantern dimmed. Orion felt cold. "What happened here?" Lumi bowed her head. "Not all who walk the path are ready. Some run from their shadows instead of listening." The echo was faint, broken, and almost angry. "I hid. I ran. I forgot how to be real." Orion stepped back. "Can it heal?" he asked. "With time and truth," Lumi replied. "But we must go. The forest doesn't want to be disturbed too long." They left the cracked tree behind, and slowly the light returned. The forest seemed to sigh in relief. As they walked, Orion grew quiet. "Is this what it means to listen?" he asked. "To hear even the pain?" Lumi stopped and looked at him. "Yes." Listening isn't just about sounds, it's about hearing what hides beneath them. Joy, fear, longing, hope. Orion looked at his own hands. How do I leave a whisper? 2. Lumi's lantern glowed brighter. When you're ready, your heart will know what to say. Until then, keep walking, keep listening. As they continued, the trees grew thinner, and a soft mist rolled in. Shapes moved in the distance, gentle creatures with glowing eyes, curious birds with tails like ribbons, and tiny lights flitting between branches. They came upon a small stream that sang a lullaby as it flowed. On its banks sat a frog with golden eyes. Evening, croaked the frog. Orion blinked. You talk. I echo, said the frog. I say what's already been said, but I say it when someone needs to hear it. What do I need to hear? Orion asked Dot. The frog smiled, a little sadly. You are not too small to matter, not too lost to return, not too late to begin. Orion's throat tightened. The frog's voice had been his mother's, once soft and sure. Lumi touched his shoulder. The forest gives you back the things you need to remember. They crossed the stream and entered a grove where the trees stood in perfect circles. In the center, a stone pedestal held a silver bowl filled with moonlight. Lumi nodded toward it. This is where you leave your first whisper. Orion hesitated. What do I say? Lumi smiled. Whatever truth you carry right now, even if it's small. He stepped up and leaned toward the bowl. His breath shimmered in the moonlight dot, and he whispered, I don't know if I'm brave, but I'm still walking. The bowl glowed, and a silver ribbon of light floated upward, curling into the sky. It drifted toward one of the trees, and as it touched the bark, a new carving appeared, Orion's name, and the image of a fox beside a boy. Lumi bowed her head respectfully. The forest remembers. Orion looked up at the night sky, stars blinking softly. I want to keep going, he said. Then let's, said Lumi. There are still many echoes ahead, and not all are sad. Some are songs, some are laughter, some are light. As they left the grove, the moon rose higher, and the lantern swung brighter. Orion didn't feel so small anymore. The path stretched out ahead, blowing gently under paw and foot. Dot. The forest of echoes faded behind them, but the whisper it left behind stayed with Orion's heart. Those who listened shaped the world. The moon hung lower than before, a glowing eye that watched over the quiet forest like a patient guardian. The light was now less silvery and more golden, as if it had been warmed by the fox's lantern. The trees, once tall and looming, now bent slightly in gentle curves, creating arches over the mossy path, as though they, too, were bowing in reverence to the little fox and his quiet mission. The night, though still, pulsed with anticipation. Something was shifting. Luma stepped lightly over a fallen log, his lantern swinging with a hushed chime. The path now split into 3 directions, each cloaked in its own shade of moonlight. The left was pale and icy, the middle soft and dappled, and the right warm and amber-hued. He paused. Which way now? Luma whispered, not to himself, but to the lantern. The flame inside flickered, paused, and then leaned ever so slightly toward the right path. Luma nodded. Thank you. With careful steps, he turned right and continued down the amberlit trail. The ground was softer here, cushioned with layers of fallen leaves and pine needles that released the scent of memory of stories long told and dreams still blooming. The trees grew shorter, friendlier, and the air was thick with the sound of something forgotten. Laughter. He rounded a bend and saw a small glade bathed in golden light. In its center stood a willow tree with bark like silk and leaves that shimmered like coins. Beneath the tree sat a figure, a girl, no older than Luma, her dress stitched from petals and wind. She looked up and smiled. You're late? Luma blinked. Do I know you? Not yet, she said, brushing a strand of glowing hair behind her ear. But I know you. You're the lantern fox. You follow the Moonlight Path. I do, he said cautiously. Are you one of the keepers? The girl stood, her bare feet whispering against the moss. I'm the keeper of the forgotten games, the laughter that echoes only in dreams. You need what I got to continue. Luma tilted his head. Games! She nodded and, with a wave of her hand, the clearing shimmered. Suddenly, they were surrounded by transparent figures, children and animals, squirrels and owls, even a bear cub dancing, running, playing tag, singing riddles, and giggling as they tumbled in joy. The glade was alive with the spirit of play. You need to remember, she said, offering her hand. You can't carry the light of dreams if you forget how to laugh. Hesitant, but curious, Luma placed his paw in her hand. Instantly, he was swept into a swirl of movement. He chased a squirrel made of stars, solved a riddle posed by a snail with a monocle, balanced on a moonbeam like a tightrope, and laughed a deep, hearty laugh that filled the sky with sparks. When he stopped, he felt lighter. The lantern, too, burned brighter. The girl nodded, satisfied. Now you remember. Keep going. The next keeper won't be so gentle. Luma bowed deeply. Thank you. She waved as he turned, the laughter still echoing behind him. As he stepped back onto the path, the trees once again leaned in. And now they whispered not warnings, but encouragement. The moon shifted again closer now. He walked for what felt like hours, the path darkening, narrowing, and then opening again into a meadow filled with floating stones. They hovered inches above the ground, pulsing faintly. At the center stood a shadowed figure, tall and cloaked in night itself. Luma slowed. The lantern dimmed dot, the figure spoke, its voice a chorus of winds. You seek the source of the dreamlight, but have you faced your own shadow, Fox? Luma stood still, heart thudding. I don't know. The figure raised a hand, and from its cloak poured hundreds of little shadows fox-shaped, but darker, brittle, eyes glowing faintly red. They circled Luma. These are your fears, the figure said. Your doubts, your moments of unkindness, your regrets, your selfish thoughts. Luma's fur bristled. The lantern shook in his paw. You must choose, the figure continued. Run and remain in shadow, or step forward and let the light reveal you. Luma clenched his jaw. He stepped forward. The shadows hissed. The lantern flared. And then, instead of fleeing, Luma opened his arms. He embraced the nearest shadowed dot. It let out a long, surprised cyan melted into his chest. One by one, he hugged them all, and each dissolved, leaving behind a tiny star that floated upward and joined the night sky dot at last. Only the tall figure remained. It stepped back. You are brave, it said. And because of that, the path is open. The stones lifted higher, forming a glowing bridge across the meadow. Luma nodded, his eyes soft. He stepped onto the stones, and as he walked across the air, the moon smiled. Asterisk, asterisk, as dawn broke gently across the mountains. The sky bled hues of pale rose and deep violet, like a watercolor painting left unfinished. The lantern fox, now accompanied by little Minna and her glowing pebble pouch, stood atop the ridge where they had slept the night before. Below them stretched the shimmering valley, an endless expanse of dewdrop-covered grass, golden reeds, and tall willow trees whose branches shimmered as though kissed by stardust. This valley was not on any map. Only those who truly listened with their hearts could find a dot. Minna blinked in awe. It's like the earth is dreaming, she whispered. The fox nodded, lantern tail glowing dimly in the morning light. This valley holds forgotten songs, dreams, whispered by the wind, by those who once passed through here in silence. They began their descent slowly, the tall grass parting with every delicate step. Minna could feel something unusual under her feet, not just the softness of the earth, but a kind of pulse, like a heartbeat in the land. As they walked, she noticed tiny silvery flowers opening wherever her feet touched the soil. It's your kindness, the fox explained. This place responds to the soul. A gentle melody began to rise round them, not from any instrument, but from the valley itself. It was a harmony of breeze through leaves, birdsong stitched with echoes. and distant laughter that felt like memories. At the heart of the valley stood a crystal archway formed from branches of moonwood trees, entwined with vines of glowing lilies. It was here, the fox told her, that many travelers had come seeking answers to questions they could not voice. Do you have a question, Minna? The fox asked, pausing under the archway. Minna looked up, eyes wide and vulnerable. Yes, why did I always feel like I didn't belong, even when I was surrounded by people who loved me? The fox tilted its head, and for a moment, the lantern tail dimmed to a soft ember. Because you are made of echoes. You were born to hear things others cannot, the laughter that lingers, the silence that speaks. You are not alone. You are simply tuned to a different part of the song. Tears welled in Mina's eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. She had carried that question like a stone in her chest for so long. She didn't realize how heavy it was until the answer lifted it. Just beyond the archway, the valley opened to a large circle of clear ground where small, smooth stones had been arranged in spiral patterns. Each stone pulsed faintly with inner light. Minna stepped carefully inside the spiral, the fox close behind her. As she reached the center, the stones began to hum a deep, resonant tone that made the air shimmer. Images rose before her like mist, her mother's lullabies, the faces of old friends, stars blinking over rooftops, the way candlelight danced in her childhood bedroom. These are your shadows, the fox said softly. Not the dark kind, the ones that follow us because they love us. Minna stood quietly in the center as the hum grew stronger, not loud but deeper, like a river flowing beneath her thoughts. She saw herself, a little girl under a tree, offering breadcrumbs to ants. She saw herself drawing constellations in the dirt. She saw herself afraid and brave, lost and found. When the humming finally faded, Minna noticed a new stone lying at her feet. This one glowed blue, different from the others. She picked it up and felt warmth spread through her fingers. A memory you're meant to carry forward, the fox told her. A piece of today, made to last. As they left the spiral, the valley seemed to sigh, contented. The willow trees swayed gently, as if waving goodbye. The path ahead was now clearer than before, lit not only by the fox's lantern tail, but by the small blue stone in Mina's pocket. Before they exited the valley, Minna turned back one last time. Will I ever return here? When you need to, the fox replied. This place remembers. With that, they continued onward, toward the place where the moonlight path met the sky. The horizon was a gentle stroke of gold and lavender as dawn whispered across the canopy of the whispering forest. Beneath its glistening leaves, the boy and the fox walked side by side in silence. The moonlight path shimmered faintly beneath their feet, fading slowly with the rising sun, a reminder that the journey was reaching its end. I don't want it to be over, said the boy. Barely more than a breath, the fox looked ahead, its glowing lantern tail flickering with a slower rhythm now. The journey never truly ends, only changes, the fox replied. Like the phases of the moon, or the tide in the sea, always returning, always becoming. The boy looked down at his hands. They were no longer trembling from fear, no longer unsure of their place in the world. He had changed, grown, and softened in ways he couldn't explain. As they climbed a final moss-covered hill, a clearing unfolded before them, wide, circular, bathed in a light that didn't come from the sun or the stars. In the center stood a single tree, with bark like woven silver thread and leaves that glowed faintly with memories. It was not large, nor grand, but it was profound. The lantern tree. The fox sat before it, his lantern tail gently swaying. This is where I leave you, the fox said. The boy's heart dropped. But I thought. The fox turned and nuzzled the boy's hand with the tip of his glowing tail. The path was for you to find who you are, to listen, to feel. You no longer need the lantern to light your way. You have become the lantern. The boy blinked. He could feel something stir inside his chest, a warm glow, a quiet courage that hadn't been there before. He looked to the tree. In the branches hung hundreds of small lights, some faint, some bright, all swaying gently in an unseen breeze. They were lanterns, memories, journeys. The fox raised its tail one final time. Place your hand on the tree. The boy stepped forward. His hand trembled just a little as he reached out and touched the silver bark. The moment his skin met the tree, a soft pulse of light spread through it, and one of the hanging lanterns gently floated down, landing softly in his open palm. The fox smiled. Your story has been added to the tree. The boy turned to look at him, tears pooling, but not falling. Will I see you again? The fox tilted his head. When you truly listen to the night, when your heart walks softly and your soul speaks gently, yes, and just like that, the fox began to fade, as though made of mist and memory, his lantern tail flickering into stardust. The boy stood still, the lantern in his hands glowing gently. He didn't feel alone, but the journey down the hill felt lighter. Though the forest remained as vast and mysterious as before, he walked with quiet assurance. Birds began to stir. Morning light kissed the leaves, and somewhere in the distance, water trickled over Stone Dot. At the forest's edge, he found a small path he hadn't noticed before. It led to a field, then a village, his home. Yet everything felt different. He saw beauty in the curve of the tree branches, in the flutter of wings, in the way the wind carried old songs through the grass. When he reached his doorstep, the boy turned around and looked once more at the forest beyond Dot. He held the lantern close and whispered, "Thank you." Asterisk years passed. The boy grew into a man, and then into an old man, and the glow inside him never faded. He became known in the village as the one who walked slowly, who listened deeply, and who told stories that made even the most restless child fall silent with wonder. No one knew exactly where he had gone as a boy. But every night, before sleep, he would light a small lantern and place it by the window, and children would gather beneath his porch to hear the tale of the lantern fox and the path made of moonlight. And somewhere deep within the forest, in a silver tree whose bark shimmered like stardust, a new lantern glowed softly, not too bright, not too dim, just enough to guide another child who had forgotten how to listen. The end.